It's Alejandro Duarte with MariaDB to talk about JPA, Java Persistence API. Well, it's actually called Jakarta Persistence nowadays. And we're going to create a very simple application, let me put this over here, to demonstrate how to use JPA. JPA is a set of interfaces mostly. So it's the specification of a library, if you wish, that implementers can implement. So one of the, maybe the most popular implementation of JPA is Hibernate. So that's what we are going to use. And I'm going to show you the code. We are not going to go through the theory of this. I just want to show you how to use it so that you can then later investigate further more advanced topics and how to do more advanced things with JPA. And so for that, I'm going to use IntelliJ IDEA to create a new project here. Maven, no archetype. We're going to do everything from scratch. JPA Hibernate demo, maybe that's a good name. And well, you see that it's empty. The pom.xml is almost empty. We need dependencies. We need to add JPA first. Let's go ahead and do that. JPA is Jakarta Persistence. And so that's where I'm going to Google. Jakarta Persistence, Maven dependency, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to find it very easily here. So this is kind of the set of interfaces. There are classes there for sure, but it's kind of interfaces. We don't have the implementation. Like I said before, the implementation is Hibernate. So hibernate.org. And you see a bunch of very interesting projects there. The one we are going to use is the ORM, Object Relational Mapping. That means we're going to map Java objects to tables, right? A relation is a table in the SQL world. And you can see that they are a JPA provider. So they are implementing JPA. Very good news for us. So let's go to get started because I saw the dependencies here. So it says like, in case you want to use the Jakarta JPA API, because you can use Hibernate without JPA, but we want to use JPA, then we need to use those. So now we have JPA and Hibernate ready. We need a driver. We're going to use MariaDB. So MariaDB, JDBC, driver, Maven, that's here. JDBC is a technology for database connectivity in Java. I have a video that explains that a little bit. And let's go with the 3.0.2 release candidate because it's a much powerful driver than the 2.x series. And it's a release candidate, so it's almost there, right? Okay, let's refresh this so we can use it. And the first thing I want to do is to define the database connection. And for that, we need a file called persistence.xml. But it needs to be inside the meta-inf, all caps, meta-inf directory, persistence.xml. Yeah, I was checking that was correct. I hope it was. And then I saw here, before I started recording the video, getting started guide. And well, you see how to get start there. But there is a tutorial using the Java Persistence API or Jakarta Persistence. And so they show an example of a persistence.xml file without any configurations. Yeah, sure, let's do that. And you can see that it contains just one element inside persistence. There's one element called persistence unit. A persistence unit, it's kind of a configuration for a set of classes that we want to, the classes, Java objects that we want to persist. And so it includes a database connection. And here's where we are going to configure that. And we can give this any name. So for example, this we call this JPA Hibernate demo. So it's called kind of similar to that, JPA Hibernate demo. Well, let's say, well, okay, let me show you this first. So we need to specify a transaction type. And we're going to use resource local here. If we were using some kind of container or something that provides the transaction kind of objects, if you wish, then we will use the other one. But we're going to manage these here locally. and then we can define a set of properties. So of course we need to define the URL, the JDBC URL, and in JDBC, actually, before we do that, probably we need a database, right? So let's check that we have a database. I have MariaDB running in this computer, so it's MariaDB at localhost seems to be a good name for that. My user is user, password is password, but you can use any other database. You can use, for example, SkySQL if you don't even want to install anything here. So it would be in the cloud. You can try it for free, by the way. And now we have here, let's create a new database, JPA demo. Should be all right. Okay. And let's use JPA demo. Actually, we don't need this, but anyway, we have the database. So the JDBC, all the URL, JDBC URLs start with that. Then the database vendor, MariaDB. Let me get rid of this over here. Colon, and then the, well, we need to identify that database. It is running in this machine, local host 3306, which is the port by default, and then the name of the database, JPA demo, right? Yeah, JPA demo. We obviously need the user, of the database user, and we obviously need a password. And we need the other one I want to use is this schema generation database action. There are several options here. So if you're deploying to production, something like that, you will select none. You don't want to do anything. But if you, for example, use drop and create, what happens is that when you start the application, it's going to drop the tables and then it's going to create them again. We'll see this in action. And actually, this is good because since we are just starting, then it's kind of good to start from scratch anytime we run the application again. I think this is ready. Now, you could create several persistence units, right? Each one with a different name. So you will see that if I change the name, it kind of removes the error color there. But we only want to have one. And we want to persist something. Let's create a new Java class in com.example. We want to persist something, some kind of Java objects, and you create objects through classes. So programming language is the class that we want. Language, right. And so let's say a programming language has string with the name, and it has an integer with the rating. Okay, now because we're going to persist this, let's imagine that maybe we want to allow users to edit the name. So maybe we want to identify a programming language by some sort of, you know, an integer maybe. That is the ID, integer ID. So we want to map these to a database table with these 3 columns. How to do that? You need to mark this with entity. And that's what an entity is. It's a class that's going to be that the JPA can persist if you configure everything correctly here. So you can see it's red, and that's because if we have an entity, we need to define at least one ID. You can actually find several if you want it, but we're not going to do that here. And then we don't want to care about kind of assigning the values to this. So we're going to do we're going to mark this with generated value, and we can use several strategies. And as you can see, there are kind of things, database-like things, right? So we're going to use identity here. So database is going to use the primary key there in MariaDB to create the IDs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. And with that, it's valid. But we need to do some more things. So, well, obviously we need getters and setters for all this. Otherwise, how can we change and get these values, right? Because we're reading from the database, we need to set the values, and we are then writing to the database, so we need to get them. Or JPA needs to do that. The other requirement for an entity is to have a default constructor. And yeah, Java by default provides this, so we don't really need it. But what if we wanted to have one, which maybe we want, because it's handy. So what if we want to have, actually, let me use the this wizard kind of thing here to take these two. What if we want another a non-default constructor? Well, we still have to do that. You could, I believe you can do, you could declare this as protected maybe, and it should work. Let's keep it public for now. I'm actually not sure. That's a good question. I should check that. I should have checked that before I started recording this video. Anyway, but you need a default constructor, or whatever the. Please check the specification to see what's the scope that the scopes that are supported. Okay, so that's it. Now, the other thing that I would suggest having here is a proper implementation of the equals and hash code. So, for example, on most IDEs have this. If you're not using IntelliJ IDEA, you'll find something similar to generate the equals and hash code methods. So that, in my case, two objects with the same ID are going to be the same, right? Very good. So we have that. Now, what if? So, how can I show you this? Let's leave it as is. So this is the first step. We're gonna get back to this in a moment. But so let's say we have an application, whatever is the application, with a public static void main here, and we want to do some things here. So maybe in the application level, we shouldn't use JPA right there. We should encapsulate that somewhere. So for that, I'm going to use a JPA service that we're going to implement from scratch as well. And let's make these singleton. So singleton, it has a private constructor, so we cannot instantiate that outside this class. And then we have a static JPA service instance. And now we need a getter. Actually, I think I can do this, get instance. And we return that instance, but first we need to check whether it's null. Is it null? So let's say, yeah, it is. Okay, then instance, it's going to be, oh, what happened there? It's going to be a new JPA service. If not, just return the instance. And we need maybe, I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. So now this is a singleton, right? Very basic singleton. Now you should also synchronize if this was multi-thread. This is not going to be multi-threaded, but just so that you know. That's it. So how do we use JPA really? How do we do that? Well, the entry point of a JPA or of the JPA specification is the EntityManager factory. So we need one of those guys here, and we need to initialize this here. So this EntityManager factory is going to be something. We cannot just do new. We need to get it from the persistence.get EntityManager factory. And if you look at it, it accepts the persistence unit name. Remember, the persistence unit name is here. We wrote this. And this can be anything. For example, since this is a local resource local kind of transaction, we can call it like that. You don't have to. You can use really anything. It's just kind of a way to identify this persistence unit. And we need to provide a way to also to shut it down. So shut it down when we don't need the service anymore. Maybe when the application is stopped, we should call EntityManager close. Right. So we have almost everything in place, except maybe we want to expose that somehow. The EntityManager factory, get EntityManager factory, so that, you know, the application can use it. The application, I mean, this class over here. So now for example, we can create a new private JPA service, in fact, we can get it from here. It doesn't matter. This is just an example. Get instance. So we get it there. What happens is that, again, let's go through that. So it calls this, creates the entity manager factory. No, sorry, it goes first. It goes to the get instance. It's null, so it creates a new, and then it goes here, creates a new entity manager factory, and we are ready. But we need to, at some point, we need to shut down that service, JPA service. It should be static, so we can use it inside the main method, which is static. So JPA service shutdown, right? And this should, maybe we are gonna try to do a bunch of things and then finally just shut it down, right? Something like that. There are much better ways to implement that, but I hope you just get the idea by looking at this code. The important thing is that we shut it down when the application is done. And even if there's going to be lines of code here, right? So if something happened here, well, it's going to go through this line anyway, and it should work. Now, maybe an improvement before we continue. I just wanted to do this. I feel bad if I don't do it. You should check if the entity manager factory is not null. At least let's add that part yeah, to avoid no pointer exception. Anyway, back to the application. So now we have kind of a service that uses JPA, and we can get the entity manager factory. And this is what happens mostly when you are using some kind of framework like I don't know, Spring or Jakarta E. You'll get kind of this entity manager factory or the entity manager itself, and then you use it. In our case, we implemented that ourselves, and now we are getting the entity manager factory. And with this factory, we can create, well, what can that factory create? Entity managers. And an entity manager, now it makes sense, right? Entity manager is managing entities. And we have one entity here. Here's the entity, right? So we're going to manage these entities. Makes sense, I guess. Now, in order to perform operations in the database, we need a transaction. So we probably need to get a transaction from here. We need to assign this to an entity manager, and then we use the entity manager. At this point, we forget about the factory. And we get a transaction. And I'm going to assign this so that you see it to a variable, that is. And we do some stuff, right? Here, we use that entity manager to persist or query the database. And when we say, hey, just commit that, we're done. Or if there's an error, then we could say, roll it back, we're done. So for example, if we want to persist, let's say that I'm leaving all these space so that you understand that this is kind of where we interact with the database. Between all these boilerplate code that it can get even a bit messy. I'll show you in a moment. So we have the entity manager, and we're going to persist a new programming language because that's an entity with the name Java and the rating of 10 points to Java. So actually, let's run this and see if it works. If there are errors, which there are, we'll try to fix them. Let's see what happened here. It says transaction not successfully started, illegal state. What happened when we were running commit here? So let's see. It's not start. We didn't start. I didn't read the message. Of course, we need to begin the transaction, right? Well, maybe it's good. Maybe it's good. Now you will remember. You won't make this mistake. I made it for you. So we need to run this in a transactional boundary, maybe. So we need to begin and then we need to commit. So let's see if that fixes the problem. There we go. So it seems like it did. And let me show you what happened in the database. So in the database, we have a table called programming language with 3 columns. Let's see the columns: ID, name, rating. And if I run select all on this table, I see Java with rating 10. This is coming from the database. So it's working. Now, I don't like this name, programming language. Let's say your company, the company you work for, we have in place some sort of naming conventions. So we need to configure the name of the table. So how do we do that? Table name programming language. So let's say we have to do that. And we can do the same with this. So column, because, well, it's a column, right? Column name. So let's say the convention said that we need to use the first letter of each word, programming language, when it's 2 words. When the name is 2 words, and then underscore and the name of the column. So let's do the same for this. Name equals programming language name. We can duplicate this to save some keystrokes, and programming language rating. I think that's it. So let's run this and see that now we will get those here. And this is recreating the tables because, remember, we put the value drop and create here for schema generation database action. That's why. But now the columns have names that we wanted, and the table is also consistent with the name that we want. Okay, very good. Back to the EntityManager factory and all that stuff. So this could get even uglier because, well, what if we have several programming languages that we want to track with this app, and something wrong for some reason happened here, like a null pointer exception, or we calculated something and doesn't seem to be what we wanted. We need to roll back that transaction. So the pattern that you usually will see is you create Boolean call, let's say success, maybe false, and then once you do everything, you say success equals true, and based on the value of that, you commit or transaction rollback, right? So that's what you do. Now, something could be wrong that we actually don't, we don't really know. We couldn't assign that. I mean, I'm never assigning this to false anyway. But what if some null pointer exception happened here? So what you have to do is try this, and then finally, let me move this over here actually. No, sorry. No, it was okay. I wanted to move only these guys. And then in the finally block, we put that. Let me format this for you. So we try to do this stuff, and then we check the value of success. So of course at this, for example, this point, success is false still. And so it's gonna go through rollback, which is, yeah, well, it's a good thing. We don't want to save Java if we cannot save JavaScript. Okay, that's the idea. So it's atomic. It looks like it's a lot of boilerplate, right? So it looks a bit uglier. So maybe we can encapsulate that here, and that's something that I want to show you. This is what frameworks do, something similar in a much better way, but you'll get the idea. So let's create a public something. It returns something we don't know. Run in transaction, and a transaction can be defined as a function that takes an entity manager, not manager factory, entity manager, which is what we actually want to use, and returns something of type T that, well, we don't know at this point. Let's call this function. And now we can move all this boilerplate code over there. So let me copy all this thing. I'm not gonna delete it yet. And we are the JPA service, so we just need to get the entity manager factory or use it directly. Right? And then we don't know what is it that the application wants to do, so we just call function apply, and we pass the entity manager, and this returns something, return value of type T, which is good. Return return value. All right. we need to define the parameter first, right? The generic parameter. Very good. So now we can run that. So what we did here is it's just, we encapsulate all the boilerplate thing. Again, frameworks would do that for you. So we don't need all this stuff. We probably need these things still, but we don't need, oops, we don't need that. And we don't need the success thing either. What we can do is, let me clean those over there as well. JPA service run in transaction, and we provide a transaction function. We don't use new function. We use EntityManager. We use a lambda expression here, and here we can use it. Let's move these guys over here, and that's it. Now we need to return something, but we didn't need to return when we were creating stuff. Maybe we could return the number of programming languages that we added, etc. And you know what? Let's do something even more exciting. So let's say we have Java, JavaScript, C++, C#, Python, Go, Rust, PHP, you name it. We split this with commas. This is an array, so we can do array stream arrays dot stream and pass this array. Now we have the stream, and now we map. We have the name of the programming language. We name it to a new. We map it to a new programming language with that name. Let's use math.random times 10. We need to cast this, and now we have this. So for each, we are going to call EntityManager persist. Pretty cool, right? Random. So we created a bunch of programming language, and we are persisting those in a transaction. Now, maybe it makes sense to put this in a method, create programming languages. And maybe we want to print programming languages. So let's create that too, so you see the return value in action. Let me move this to the end. So the same JPA service dot running transaction. We have an entity manager, and we can use something like this. Now we use the entity manager to create a query, and we use this special syntax. In JPA is not SQL, so we can say select something like the programming language, maybe like this, from programming language, the name of the class, not the table, where, for example, the what was it? The rating. I didn't put the alias here. Rating is greater than 5, and so we can. Let me format this for you a little bit better. And just so that you see it, this creates a query, but we can also specify what it returns, the type, the result of the result. So it's programming language.class. And so now it's typed over here. You'll see it if I assign this. I don't want to assign, I actually want to get the result list. And this is, I'll assign it for you here real quick. A list. And we can just return that, right? And then we assign that thing to a list, programming languages. This is like what you would encapsulate in another service, and then you'll use that list. What do I call that? Let's call this for simplicity list dot stream map. So we have a programming language, and we're going to convert that to a string. So get the name plus colon plus program language get rating, and then for each we're gonna do system out print line. So we print everything there. Now we can simplify this a bit with a lambda expression. Maybe let me format this a bit better. I guess that's easier to read, I hope. And I guess that's it. So let's try it. I wrote a lot of code. Let's see if it works. It worked. It's a miracle, really. Only Java got 8. Let's try this again, because we are deleting everything and start again. Now JavaScript got 9. One more. Let's see. PHP got 9. Rust, JavaScript, and Java. All right, so you get the idea, right? So this is how you use JPA with Hibernate. These are the basic concepts. Please go and explore the framework that you're going to use. If you're going to use Spring, explore what are the capabilities there. If you're going to use Jakarta, my intention here was to show you the core concepts, how to use it. This is not how you really use it in business, big applications. You would use a framework like I said, Spring or Jakarta. But I hope you like it. Let me know if you have any questions about this topic, or if you want me to cover any other topics related to persistence, to MariaDB, to Java, and I'll be happy to help with that. Until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.